Excellent. We're going to start with a discussion on language equity so that everyone that needs to hear it in a different language can get to the correct time or place. So the topic is the intersection of disability and abuse. Today is April 11th, 2022. And interpreters, I'm going to let you take it over.
Thank you, Debbie. Gracias. Good afternoon. I'll first do this introduction in Spanish, then in English, and then my interpretation colleague Lourdes will do it in Haitian Creole. Buenas tardes, mi nombre es María Angélica, mis pronombres son ella y ellex, y hoy estamos proveyendo interpretación en español y en criollo haitiano con MARP Language Services, para asegurarnos de que todos tengamos acceso a la importante información de hoy, sin importar la forma en la que prefiramos expresarnos. También estamos reconociendo la presencia de nuestros colegas de interpretación, intérpretes de lengua de signos americana, para traer aún más acceso a este espacio. Si usted desea escuchar en español, puede hacerlo haciendo clic en su computador, abajo a mano derecha en el globo que dice interpretación. Ahí elige el idioma que prefiere y le recomendamos que no silencie el audio original. Si está conectándose desde su teléfono, usted puede tocar la pantalla de su teléfono. Abajo a mano derecha, toque los 3 puntos que dicen más, elija interpretación de idiomas y ahí elige el idioma que prefiera. Esas instrucciones también las estamos poniendo en el chat. Y si tiene algún problema o pregunta acerca de la interpretación, por favor déjenos saber en cualquier momento durante la reunión en el chat y con mucho gusto les ayudaremos. Gracias. Good afternoon. My name is Maria Angelica. My pronouns are she and they. And today we will be providing interpretation in Haitian Creole and Spanish with MARP Language Services in order to ensure that we can all participate and have access to today's very important conversation, regardless of the ways in which we choose to communicate. Also acknowledging the presence of our American Sign Language interpretation colleagues, furthering access in this space. Today, if you would like to listen in Spanish or in Creole, you may do so. If you are joining the meeting from a computer, at the bottom right-hand corner, you'll please click on the globe that says interpretation. There you choose the language in which you would like to listen, and we ask that you do not mute original audio. Now, if you are joining from a phone, it's a little bit different. If you tap the phone screen, you will see 3 little dots at the bottom right-hand corner that say more. When you tap the dots, choose language interpretation, and there you choose the language that you prefer. Then at the top right, press done. We are dropping these instructions in the chat. If at any point in time you have any questions or issues with your interpretation, please let us know in the chat and we will be happy to support you. And now I pass the mic on to my colleague Lourdes.
Merci. Bonsoir tout le monde. Nan pam c'est Lourdes avec MARP Language Services et après-midi ça, c'est plaisir pour moi avec Deborah pour nous assurer interprétation pour nous dans langue créole haïtienne. Donc, langue disponible, différentes langues disponibles sur l'espace là, une façon pour tout le monde une chance pour entendre et puis participer dans la langue yo pi à l'aise là-dedans là. Donc, dans l'espace ça, il y a 3 langues, anglais, espagnol et puis créole haïtien. Donc, si vous pas parler tous les 3 langues, on a demandé pour choisir un canal que vous pouvez à l'aise là-dedans là. Donc, si c'est créole haïtien on parler, donc et vous allez regarder en bas à droite sur l'écran là, ou après globe terrestre là, ou cliquer sur lui et qui li marque interprétation, ou cliquer, on va choisir créole haïtien et puis on va tomber dans le canal haïtien quand on attendez tout ça qui va passer dans l'espace là sur plateforme là, dans langue créole, dans langue paola. Donc, et si vous même vous attendez tout sur téléphone intelligent, on a demandé pour garder en bas à droite jusqu'en bas, après 3 petits points qui dit moi, on va cliquer sur là, on va mettre une page que tu as une option pour interprétation. wap cliquer sur option interprétation et puis ça va choisir encore créole haïtien et puis là on regarder en l'air sous bord droite écran, petit écran téléphone intelligent, on va qui écrit done qui avec un checkmark, on va cliquer sur lui en façon pour capable tomber et puis s'arrêter dans le canal haïtien. Donc pour avoir une meilleure sonorisation, n'a demandé s'il te plaît, on va mettre audio original là sous silence parce que dans le cas on pas attendre ni anglais ni créole là donc pour pas vraiment interrompre soit attendez à ou mettre audio original là sous silence de façon pour qu'attendez à 100% en créole ça cap dit dans l'espace ça dans moment ça donc si pour faire ça nous demandons prendre un petit temps pour faire ça qu'on y a pour tomber dans le canal là et puis ça pour participer avec nous dans la langue pola dans la langue créole donc sous cas de n'importe petit problème ou pas qu'à entrer voilà on information pour nous sur chat là et puis ça nous va aider vous pouvez mettre information ça qui j'en pour accéder à interprétation sur chat là tout ou même tout capable et puis ça ou qu'a fait et tape ça pour compte pour entrer dans le canal haïtien nous disons déjà merci pour présence et puis ça bonne participation à tout et un chacun. Thank you and over.
Thank you so much. We are going to continue talking about effective communication and inclusive communication. But before I continue, I just want to say hi and tell you my name is Debbie and tell you that I'm going to be turning off my camera and I'm going to ask everybody else to turn off your camera unless you're speaking. And this is to help make sure that the people that need to see the American Sign Language interpreters can. So we will turn back on the cameras later on, but for now we're going to turn off the cameras so that we can focus on the presentation. All right, so let's continue. You'll see that we talked about language equity in terms of Spanish and Haitian Creole, but we also have, Fred, can you please put yourself on mute? Thank you. We also have 2 American Sign Language interpreters. They will be rotating every 20 minutes or so that they take a break and switch back and forth. We will also have closed captions available. And there has been a link placed in the chat box that you can use if you want to see the captions, or you can turn them on at the bottom of your Zoom system and you can click the captions on. And I believe I see them on my screen. I don't know if you can see them on my shared screen, but they're showing on my screen as well. If for some reason you have a question or a concern, please unmute yourself and talk. Sharon is here, Allison is here, and we will listen and help you if you need help. Also, Sharon and Allison will be monitoring the chat, so you can put comments in the chat. I won't be able to see them because I'm sharing my screen, but they will let us know if something comes up that you need help with. Also, please, when you do speak, try to speak slowly and clearly because we have multiple different types of interpreters that need to interpret what you're saying. And speakers, if you speak too fast, they're gonna let you know, say slow down a little bit so that we can make sure that we're interpreting everything that needs to be interpreted correctly. As you know, this is the second of a 3-part series of trainings. The first training we did on March 21st on housing. The second training we did on it today, April 11th. And today we're going to talk about the intersection of disability and abuse. And then our third training is going to be on May 23rd. And we're going to talk about technology and effective communication and how people with disabilities can get and receive information. The first training, the video of the training is already on our YouTube channel, both on DIG's YouTube channel and Catalyst Miami's YouTube channel. The video has American Sign Language interpretation and captions in the video, and you can watch them if you missed the first training or want to go back and look at something that we talked about. I have a link to how you get to that at the end of this training. We have a resource page with the links on how to access the trainings. And this training should be done and on the YouTube channel by the end of the week or early next week, so that you can continue to access these trainings after today. This project is called the Enable Project, and it is sponsored and funded by the Ford Foundation. And our main group that is in charge is Catalyst Miami. And we're going to talk more about all the partners that make up the Enable Project at the end of the training. But because it's a grant funded project, we always put the grant funding language in our presentations and acknowledge our funder. Now, before I begin today, I want to explain to you all of the other accessibility features that we're going to use today for this presentation. First, as you've already heard, we take language equity very seriously, and the presentation is being conducted in English, but people can also listen to it in Spanish and Creole. And we have the captions on the bottom and the ASL interpreters on the screen. You will also notice as we go through this presentation that the top right-hand part of my slides are blank and that the bottom section of the slides are blank. This has been done intentionally because, as I told you, once we're done, we're going to have a video with the sign language interpreter and the captions embedded. So I left intentionally blank spaces so that we can very seamlessly, without covering any of the information we share with you today, pop in the American Sign Language interpreter and the captions. And this year, if you went to our first training, you know this, but we've added another layer of accessibility and inclusion into our presentations. We have invited Chaplain Besa Buell to guide us in mindfulness activities. And since the information we talk about is hard and it's emotional, we thought to address mindfulness and well-being within the content of our trainings was very important. So Chaplain Buell is going to start the training by centering us, and then in the middle between our two speakers, she is going to join us again and verbally guide us through a practice activity. Also, we have a breakout room set up and a licensed counselor in the meeting in case something you hear today triggers you and that you don't want to wait, but you want to talk to someone in the moment and process what you're feeling or what is triggering you. All you need to do is reach out to Sharon, either in a private message or in the chat, and Sharon will be able to put you in the breakout room with someone so that you can talk and not keep inside of you any feelings or triggering things that might come up as we go through the presentation. So after all of these introductions and information, we're finally ready to begin. I would like to introduce Chaplain Besa Buell and let her take over.
Hello, everyone. I am your embodiment facilitator for today. My name is Besa Buell. I am an endorsed humanist, chaplain, a diversity, equity, and inclusion educator, spiritual director, and community minister, providing decolonized trauma and emotional support through my organization, the Gray Tea Kettle Chaplaincy, Community Care, and Support. On the slide, you'll see my contact information is available. Chaplain Besa at grayteakettle.com. And I'm very grateful to be here in this space with Enable and support the community. Today, we are going to engage in practices to gather our attention and focus. So what becomes activated is the premotor cortex as we ground ourselves in compassionate embodiment. Debbie explained a little bit about why we're including mindfulness, but it goes very, very deeper on a socialization level. We're coming from a place that is about great kindness and care, and with the aspiration to benefit others, and that we are in alignment with our character. So it's important as a chaplain to create a container of safe space, because during our program, you may find yourself triggered. We each come from different situations and trauma that we have experienced throughout our lives. So having this container of safe space is important, and you are aware of what you can expect in our time together. Sacred space. This will be a safe place. This will be a sacred and holy place. And that just means a place set apart, a place without time, a place where we are all welcome, feel seen, heard, and supported. Now, as a group, we're going to set the intention that today we're going to practice together to witness each other's humanity, stories, and journeys. We open our hearts to be present and open. We understand that this will not instantly remove the pain and trauma we have experienced throughout our lives. However, today we make an intention to shift so that it will be a soothing balm to reset our souls and community. Now, let us take a moment to reset our nervous system to be present together. So I want to invite you to get as comfortable as you can and adjust yourselves in your seat as you are able, setting your feet on the ground if all possible, and aligning your body so that way you have a clear passageway for breathing. And you're going to take 3 cleansing breaths. We're going to start taking 3 cleansing breaths through our nose and expel them as strongly as possible through our mouth. This is a way to remove any stress and tension that we are holding in our bodies and become present to this moment. So that way we can place our attention to listen to all the speakers. And at your own pace, we can begin our breathing. Inhaling deeply and expelling through the mouth. Again, inhaling deeply and exhaling through the mouth. Again, inhaling deeply and exhaling through the mouth. And stay in this moment, connecting to whatever you're feeling in your body. Maybe you feel discomfort. Maybe you feel excitement. But notice how your body is feeling in the chair that you're in. Notice your feet on the ground. It may feel cold. It may feel like your warm shoes. But feel them underneath your body, touching the ground. Next, we're going to take a little bit of tension from our head area. And so I'm going to model it for you first, and then I'd like you to accompany me. So we're going to take our hands as best as you can, always doing what you are able. And you're going to gently squeeze the top of your head And as you squeeze the top of your head, placing your attention there, the only thing that you're paying attention to is your head. And then you're going to touch your forehead. And you're going to place your hands there for a moment. So let's do that together while keeping our breath steady and focused. And so we are kneading the top of our scalps, and we're making the intention to release whatever stress we had before coming into this room. And if you want to move into the area of your neck, go ahead and do so. But make conscious effort to feel the sensations of your fingers touching and kneading your scalp. And then place your hand on your forehead and continue to breathe. And I want you to now come back into this space, putting your hands down, and reflect for 1 minute and observe what has come up for you while you did that exercise. It could be a physical sensation, a memory, an emotion, a thought. Let's take a moment just to bring it to our awareness and continue breathing. And now let that thought go. And we are ready to be back in the room with each other.
Thank you so much, Besa. That is a great way for us to start our training today. As you can see from the screen, we're going to have several different speakers today, and I don't want to waste time. Each one's going to get introduced as we go through it. So let me give you a little introduction and prepare you for what you're going to do today. So welcome again. And today is going to be our third training at the intersection of abuse and disability. In the first training, we discussed sexual assault and domestic violence and how both impact people with disabilities. We discussed how the abuse might present differently for people with disabilities and certain signs and signals to look for. And then the next year, we did a second training, and we used our Miami Inclusion Alliance liaisons to go more into detail, and we discussed what happens in court when someone tries to get a protection order. We discussed how someone could get an accommodation to go to court, and we had attorney Steve Paulson from Legal Aid discuss the legal process. Today, our Miami Inclusion Alliances are back. Their liaisons are back, and we're going to continue to discuss abuse and disability. This year, we have retired Judge Rosa Figueroa, and she is going to discuss the intersection of abuse and animal cruelty. And then we have Nilo Cuervo from the Miami-Dade State Attorney's Office, and he is going to discuss gun violence and what our community is doing about it. You will see our Miami Inclusion Alliance liaisons in short videos throughout the presentation. We're going to start with Genesis.
I am Genesis Espaillat, and I work at the City of Coral Gables as a GSR, Guest Service Representative at an Adult Activity Center. I am also a Miami Inclusion Alliance liaison. I would like to tell you about Miami Inclusion Alliance, or MIA. It is the first project in Miami-Dade to address the important issues of abuse and people with disabilities. The project was started 5 years ago with a grant from the Department of Justice Office on Violence Against Women. The Miami Inclusion Alliance mission is to learn about the intersection of disability and domestic violence or sexual assault. in order to promote a culture of inclusion within between all collaborating agencies. The vision is that every agency that serves victims and survivors is accessible, safe, and promotes dignity and respect. The Miami Inclusion Alliance is made up of 4 organizations located in Miami-Dade County. Disability Independence Group, DIG, Dade Legal Aid, which is a civil legal service provider with a dedicated domestic violence unit, Mujer, which is a certified sexual assault center that provides domestic violence and sexual assault education, direct response, and support services, and the Miami County Community Action and Human Services Department, Coordinated Victim Assistance Center, CVAC. It is one-stop center that provides holistic and coordinated services to victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, dating violence, stalking, and human trafficking.
So as Genesis just told you, she was explaining the Miami Inclusion Alliance, and we have a YouTube channel with all kinds of training and materials that you can go to if you want to learn more information. And now Kat's going to talk to you about Sexual Assault Awareness Month.
Hello, my name is Kat Magnoli, and I'm a community activist, children's book author, and Miss Wheelchair Florida 2017. I'm also a proud member of the Miami Inclusion Alliance Liaison Team. Many of you might not know that April is Sexual Assault Month. Every April, people across the United States raise awareness about sexual violence, how to prevent it, and how to support those who are affected by it. The first year it was formally celebrated was in 1971, when advocates first organized to bring this topic into the light. Because of that advocacy, Congress passed the Violence Against Women Act in 1994, and it was reauthorized by Congress this year and signed by President Biden. This act brought millions of federal dollars to communities to support victims of abuse. In our community, this movement helped us establish a safety net of services that is helping thousands of victims each year. Hello.
So as we know, and you've heard us say before, people with disabilities are more likely to experience abuse than people without them. There are approximately 61 million adults living with a disability in the United States, or just over 25% of the population. As we've told you before, people with disabilities often remain marginalized and hidden from society's view, especially when we are discussing sexual assault and domestic violence. A lot of times they stay hidden and don't get the services or help they need. In our next video, Carmen's going to give you some more information and statistics.
Hello, my name is Carmen Peralta, and I am a senior employment consultant at Best Buddies, and I also participate in the MIA Liaison Program. Research indicates that people with disability face significant increased risk of abuse. Recognizing that fact will help us as a system to address it. The data is powerful, so we want to share some of it with you. 92% of women with disabilities ranked violence and abuse as their top priority of topics affecting their lives. Women with disabilities are at least 2 times more likely to experience abuse. 97 to 99% of abusers are known and trusted by their victims and survivors with an intellectual disability. This increase in risk crosses all racial and ethnic groups. Hello.
Remember, if you're triggered, we're here to help and listen. Now, Rachel's going to introduce our first speaker.
My name is Rachel Seiler, and I work for the Center for Independent Living of South Florida, and Community Outreach, and I'm a Miami Inclusion Alliance liaison. I would like to introduce our first speaker today, Judge Rosa Figueroa. Judge Figueroa recently retired as a circuit court judge assigned to the probate division in Miami-Dade County, Florida. She also served in the family, domestic violence, and criminal divisions of the court. Judge Figueroa has participated on several committees and boards to help educate judges and stakeholders regarding issues surrounding domestic violence cases. My name is Rachel.
Okay, Judge, you get to turn on your camera and start. Welcome, and thank you again.
Thank you very much. And I just want to take a note to state how impressive the presentation has been thus far. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here. If we can go to the first slide. I'd like to welcome everyone and just a little bit about my involvement on this particular issue as it deals with domestic violence and animal cruelty. As you heard, most of my years on the bench were dealing with families afflicted with domestic violence and in the child welfare system. I became involved with a national organization of family and juvenile court judges, and it was through my contact with them that there was a presentation made on the link between animal abuse and children's abuse that really was a huge eye-opener for me. And as a result of that, it's been a growing passion of mine to bring this issue to the forefront and there is a growing recognition of the link and the importance that it demonstrates. So during this presentation, we have certain learning objectives. What I'm hoping that we gather from this is to understand the animal bond and human bond. And it is a bond because it's definitely a relationship between the animal and the human. Understand the link between interpersonal violence and animal abuse, and understand the significance of recognizing that link, why we need to understand it in order to promote safer and healthier environments for both humans and their animal companions. We can go to the next slide. Throughout this presentation, you'll see that I'm going to use elders, persons with disabilities, and vulnerable or at-risk adults interchangeably. The term is really meant to include all of these groups. Next. So why do we need to understand the link, and how do we understand it? Understanding the link is understanding the link between an elder and their pet and generations in a family, between inhumane treatment of animals and inhumane treatment of elders, and understanding the link between the agencies and individuals concerned about the welfare of elders, the safety of the community, and the fair and equal justice for all involved. And why is it so important to understand it in this terms? It's because we need to understand the dynamics of what's happening in a family holistically. We're learning that many times multiple agencies are responding to a home for a variety of reasons that are really overlapping. It can be that there's a dog excessively barking, medical visits due to dog bites. We know, for example, that in a home with child abuse, there can be a higher incidence of dog bites. It could be that there are agencies responding because of hazardous conditions, which means a house that is extremely unkept or a dog running loose. It's important to recognize how these situations and the responses to these situations overlap and might give insight to what is going behind the veil of secrecy that often accompanies abuse if we're going to effectively reveal it and address it to ensure the safety and well-being of those involved. And just as a way of introduction, I want to give you one example of how this might show up. Some of you may be familiar with the dog whisperer, I think his name is Chavez. He has that very popular show that's been going on for years. I was watching one of his episodes, and it dealt with a mother and two daughters that had called him to help them address an issue where they had several dogs, and one dog had actually killed another one during the feeding time. As he was attempting to address this issue of the violence and the aggression of the dogs, and he observed the chaos that was ensuing between the mother and the daughters during mealtime, he began to ask the family questions about the dynamics in their family. And what he learned was that there had been severe domestic violence abuse in the home. The dogs had witnessed it, and it was still affecting the family and how the family dealt with each other and how they dealt with the animals and how the animals were respecting. So we saw how domestic violence and its lingering effects was having an impact on the family. This is just one example how we can't really extrapolate one type of abuse from another or one behavior for another, and how being aware of the significance of the interrelationship of the abuse, how recognizing the interpretation and the connection of the two can give us a view and insight into what's happening in the family. If we can go to the next slide. So what do we know about the link between animals and humans? Next one. There are various studies about how there are positive impacts on the reduction of stress. But I think that even if we go beyond those studies, it's something that we know intuitively, right? If for those that have a family or a family dog, you don't need to go much further than getting home and seeing the dog's tail wag, or have a cat purring come up to you to know the difference that it causes inside. It gives elders something to care about or to care for, long or cluck. And it can also affect people who are vulnerable adults, something to care for, a reason to leave the house, to walk the dog, to provide an avenue in which to have contact with others, go out to buy the dog food. It gives you something to care about. Animals can also provide support, comfort, and security, someone to talk to. In the case of children, it's been established that children can view the loss of a pet similar to the loss of a sibling, or can view the pet as the living being that will love them unconditionally. That translates to all people, thinking that the animal will love them no matter what. Family, it can provide support for a family that's dealing with a vulnerable adult. Perhaps the stress of dealing with a vulnerable adult, having a cat or a puppy, or maybe not a puppy, but certainly a dog, can provide an outlet, something to laugh about, something to bond together about, and security. Even a small dog can give comfort and security to a person because they sound an alarm. They let someone know that there's someone that's looking out for them if there's anybody approaching. We also know that pets provide a greater life satisfaction for all the reasons that we've talked about, and that at times of grief, they can help a person deal with the grief or deal with loss. And we also know the benefits of therapy pets in nursing homes and hospitals when you see animals coming into both. There's a growing recognition of the use of animals to enhance our life, either because they were able to detect COVID, seeing eye dogs that help people with limitations on their disability, or just comfort dogs that help people who have suffered trauma in their life. So I think that the benefits of animals in our lives is well established. Apart from the fact that there have been studies that document it, I think it's something that we all intuitively know. Next slide, please. And in the case of domestic violence, this is certainly the case. For many battered survivors, pets can be a significant source of emotional and support and social support. They can even act as buffers from the aggression surrounding them. At sometimes, unfortunately, taking the abuse instead of the abuse being leveled against the human. Or, for example, I had one case in which the grandmother that did not live with the family that was being afflicted by domestic violence needed to have a seeing eye dog. It helped that the seeing eye dog was a very impressive, menacing shepherd, German shepherd. But she would indicate that She knew something was happening because of the way her dog reacted. And there were times that the presence of the dog in the home stopped the violence, or at least provided a reprieve from the violence that was generally happening in the home. An animal can also provide an escape from the abuse going in the house by either an emotional way of checking out of the abuse that you may be witnessing, or a reason to have to leave the house, like you have to walk the dog or you have to do something for the dog. Companion animals can provide physical protection from the abuser. As you heard, I presided over many cases of families dealing with abuse. And I remember one particular case in which the petitioner, the person getting the domestic violence injunction, at the end of the injunction, specifically asked me to include an order which provided her with ownership of the dog. The reason for that was that she was very tearful about it. She had indicated that she knew her dog had saved her life because the dog had interrupted an attack, which had happened when he had her pinned on the bed. The fact that the dog came in and started biting her had saved her and had provided physical abuse. So as we can see, this natural bond, the natural fact that animals enhance the lives of people, is also very, very clear in domestic violence cases, where survivors who are often suffering from great trauma and who perpetrators can manipulate their feelings, may be willing to excuse their actions, a batter's actions upon themselves, but may find it harder to excuse when the violence is perpetrated against their animals. So in some cases, it may even provide a manner of the survivor reaching out and seeking help. Next slide, please. So the Veterinary Medical Association has this definition of the bond between the animal and the human, which I think is really, really good, because they recognize the bond as one of one health. And they view it, as you can see from here, a bond that is mutually beneficial and dynamic relationship, because it is a relationship between the people and the animal, and it's influenced by behaviors that should be and are essential to the health and well-being of both. And that relationship also extends to the environment that they live in. Next one, please. So what do we know about the link between animal cruelty and all forms of interpersonal violence? We've seen that there's a strong link between people, and what we generally see is that it's generally the tip of the iceberg. So oftentimes the animal abuse may be evident, but underlying that, there's going to be child maltreatment, elder abuse, and domestic violence. So sometimes it can be the first sign of other forms of abuse. Next slide, please. And why? Because generally speaking, batters may specifically choose pets as targets because they believe law enforcement doesn't care or that they can get away with it. It's a very effective way of terrorizing or manipulating a human victim when you know the bond that exists. And there is evidence that more than half of DV survivors report delaying their escape from an abusive partner out of fear for their companion animal. Such is the case that the new shelter in Dade County has recognized this factor and built some kennels in the hopes of helping to address this issue. Next slide, please. Here we see the power and control wheel, which I'm assuming that you all may have seen previously. And it's an excellent tool to document and show how power is used to control and manipulate a person. We see that it can be used through coercion and threats, making or carrying out that threats to hurt someone or hurt the person. Intimidations. Victims often talk about knowing that violence is going to happen because of a certain look or way of acting. Emotional abuse, making someone feel bad about himself or herself as a way of controlling themselves, isolating them from others, minimizing or denying the acts of violence. In other words, it didn't happen, or it's not as bad as what you're saying. Using children or things that are loved as a way of controlling the person, making them feel guilty about leaving. turning kids against them, using privilege as a way of controlling a person that you want to victimize, treating them as a servant, acting superior, economic abuse, of course, controlling the purse strings. And what we see about this wheel, as we look at the way that power and control is used, is that it can really be applied to all forms of violence against humans and elders and animals, because violence is violence is violence. It's a behavior that's exerted upon a vulnerable community. Next slide, please. And physical violence can be used upon elders or people with disabilities in a variety of different ways. Physical abuse. It can be exerted during caregiving or not. The adult can be handled roughly, pushed, pinched. I had a case in which a young person was left paraplegic. Her caregiver and legal guardian, that was a close family member, began drinking and was observed during the caregiving process, physically abusing the vulnerable adult as she lay in her bed. Sexual abuse, the same thing. It can happen during caregiving or not. Perhaps, and we don't like to talk about bestiality, but using an animal, putting the vulnerable person in situations that are uncomfortable in order to witness things that make them feel bad, in order to feel humiliated. Physical and emotional abuse, once again, going through that wheel, engaging in actions to humiliate the person. Perhaps they don't walk very fast, taking them to doctor's visits and making fun of them, making them make choices and ridiculing their choices, targeting their vulnerabilities, neglecting them, not assisting them using the facilities, feeding inappropriately, perhaps ridiculing personal decisions, cultural values, not respecting spiritual or traditional events, refusing to take them to religious services, isolating them, misleading them about people caring about them, refusing to take to family gatherings, refusing to allow calls, visitors, using the privilege that they have. And remember, many times a caregiver may actually be dependent somewhat on the vulnerable adult, perhaps using that dependency to exploit the vulnerability by refusing to take them to appointments, abusing of guardianships because they have the illegal ability to speak on their behalf, using it in a manner that is not in the vulnerable person's best interest. You have no idea how many cases while in probate court where I dealt with guardianships and estate cases, there were cases that the abuse was alerted as a result of bank executives seeing behavior that they believed was suspicious where the vulnerable person was being taken. Next slide, please. Additional issues that may enhance domestic violence for vulnerable population is guns, COVID, and natural disasters. Next, in the case of guns, we know that guns, the mere presence of a gun makes, and I know that you're going to get much more information about this later, but makes a victim 5 times more likely to be murdered, and over half of victims murdered were murdered with a gun, showing the lethality of domestic violence heightened with the presence of the gun. Next slide. COVID, the impact of COVID on the use of violence was noted. We had an increased inability to investigate cases because people were naturally isolated. There were difficulties in placements when relocation was necessary. There were extended stays in hospitals, reduction of available placements. Adult care facilities were closed, and doctors were doing more remote visits. All of this meant that if there was domestic violence abuse, it could be more hidden because there's less eyes on the people. And remember, this is an issue that's normally shrouded in secrecy. Next slide. Natural disasters, also increase the vulnerability and the exposure to domestic violence, either because you're in a place that you have to evacuate So that fear can be used to manipulate the person. There may be need for electricity because of machinery or other instruments that are used to provide health care for the vulnerable person that can also be used to expose that person to domestic violence, manipulation, and control. Next slide, please. This is a slide. This is the wheel. So we viewed the traditional wheel of power and control that generally addresses domestic violence. Here we see it applied to later life power and control wheel, where you see emotional and physical abuse and all the elements being used to control and manipulate the elder. So how does this apply to the subject at hand, which is the link between this type of abuse and animal cruelty? Next slide, please. This is the traditional power and control wheel, and now we've applied it to the issue of animal cruelty. And this comes to us from the National Link Coalition, which is an excellent resource if you want more in-depth information about this particular issue. So let's go through it. If you talk about emotional abuse, you're talking about humiliating and making the person feel bad. When we view it in relation to animal cruelty, it could be killing or taking a loved animal away, forcing participation in bestiality. I had a case in which a father had supervised visits because he had perpetrated domestic violence on the family. During a visit, the children were making a drawing of the family, and he said, well, you forgot to include the cat. Why don't you include the cat? The children included the cat. When the visit was over and the children were taken to the mother became very agitated. Why? Because the cat had been killed by the father in an act of domestic violence. So you can see how that creates emotional abuse. And certainly there was a clear message being sent. And of course, isolation, keeping an animal away from the vulnerable person. Next slide, please. So exploitation can come in many forms. Remember that violence is violence is violence. A person wanting to exploit and exert themselves onto another is going to use whatever means he or she has at their disposal to do so. And it can happen depending on what is available to meet that end, including the love of the use of a beloved pet or animal that's a companion. And it can be motivated by a host of illogical and damaging factors, even jealousy of a service animal. So next slide, please. Just a couple of facts about what we know about perpetrators of violence who use animals to exert control, highlighting the importance of being aware of this significance. We know that they are more dangerous and use more forms of controlling and violent behaviors. 70% of domestic violence victims whose partners had histories of pet abuse had been strangled. 26 had been forced to have sex with the suspect, and 80% feared they would be killed by the suspect. Next slide. Over 71% of battered women reported that their batter had harmed, killed, or threatened animals to coerce, control, and to intimidate them, further underscoring the nature of the violence as it's often intensified and the bond that exists between the two. Next slide. This is a wonderful slide showing so much emotion. Her decision to go to the hospital depended on what happened to her cat. Her recovery depended on the cat's well-being. So I had to find someone to care for her cat. I never thought that animal welfare would be a part of my job. That came from a caseworker. I had a case in which a caseworker told me how difficult finding placement for a vulnerable adult had been because she insisted that she had to go with her parrot. Just underscoring, it doesn't necessarily have to be a dog or a cat, right? This parrot had been with her for 25 years. She refused to be moved. They were able to find a placement for her with her parrot, but it just shows the incredible bond and how, can you imagine taking that cat away from this person? What that can do for the emotional welfare and how that can be exploited to hurt and really control someone in very bad ways. Next slide. So what I'm hoping to bring forth is a clear and undeniable recognition that the link, about the link that exists between animal abuse and interpersonal violence. When animals are abused, people are at risk. And when people are abused, animals are at risk also. Next slide. An understanding to the link can provide us with a better understanding of the dynamics of violence, its impact on our health and safety, and underscores our recognition of both. And I'm sorry, just before I get to DV injunction, I do want to share with you that I was once giving a presentation on the link between the two in front of a group of investigators for child welfare, and included a woman who acknowledged that she was not an animal person. By the end of the presentation, which talked about the ways that you can look at the care of an animal as being indicative of what may be going on in the family, she acknowledged that although she wasn't an animal person, it would be good for her to know. The same applies to any situation where a vulnerable person is. If there's a pet that appears to be malnourished, tied up outside for excessive periods of time, excessively barking, or is uncontrollable, remember about the story about the dog whisperer? It could be a sign of other things going on in the home and a cause to stop and think about what may be going on if our aim is really to improve the quality of life. It's a beneficial and a dynamic relationship that influences both. So I want to bring up, and this brings us to this slide, I want to bring up some issues that I believe are important about this. And I know that you all had a presentation on obtaining DV injunctions previously. Florida law now allows a judge to award ownership of a pet to a domestic violence victim. So someone that is being threatened or the animal is being targeted as a possible way of manipulating the alleged victim. The judge has the power to grant an injunction and give possession to the petitioner, the person seeking the injunction, the pet. And that is even if the pet is registered, owned by the respondent. So even if the dog or the animal, the pet, the cat belongs to the person acting violently, the person getting the violence, receiving the violence, the victim still has the opportunity to get the pet awarded if there's a domestic violence injunction is granted. The judge can also order that the respondent have no contact with the animal and can prohibit the aggressor from having any contact with the animal or hiding or concealing or harming the animal. Next slide, please. We talked about ways that a victim can be manipulated. There can be times that an aggressor of violence might manipulate the victim and tell them, you're crazy. I'm going to say that you committed the violence, and in some cases even come to court and say, look, I got a scratch. I was the victim of domestic violence. In those cases, if the pet is an animal that's trained to perform individual tasks that help with the disability, the judge cannot grant ownership of the animal to the perpetrator. So there should be no fear that a service animal might be used by a perpetrator of crime saying, I'm going to take you to court, I'm going to take your animal away. That couldn't happen. You would also need to know that in issuing a domestic violence injunction, the court is required to consider whether an animal, as we just went through, was used, hurt, or was threatened to be hurt or killed or done any harm to when issuing a domestic violence injunction. So that's one of the factors the judge has to consider. Another point, next slide, is that animals under certain situations may be allowed to be brought to court if you have to testify. If there's a victim that has to testify to go get an injunction or for any other reason, there may be situations in which an animal may be brought to court. There are rules about it, but whether the dog principally, which I've seen being used fits into that situation or not, it's certainly worth something knowing about. And it just further is another point, recognizing the support and emotional support that animals provide to victims of domestic violence. Next slide, please. And one last point was that a disabled individual, or when we talk about threats and manipulations and ways that a vulnerable person can be manipulated because of their love and their bond with their animal, is that disabled individuals or individuals over 62 years old can have a common household pet, presumably a dog, a cat, a bird, in a federally assisted housing or for elderly or disabled. So any threats saying, I'm going to let them know and you're going to lose your housing aren't going to work. It's just not appropriate. Next slide, please. So this is just a slide dealing with resources. Be proactive. Know if there are pet care services for elders or those with chronic illness. Sometimes a veterinary may provide services. Major stores might have, might be aware of organizations or rescues that can provide either temporary care for animals if a vulnerable person has to go in for treatments, or there's a situation where they can't care for the animal, or to assist with dog food. There could be mobile groomers, pet sitters, daycare that might be able to come and help assist take care of the pet if there are situations in which the vulnerable person is being precluded from that. Next slide. This is a link to the National Link Coalition, which is an excellent resource, once again, on all kinds of information about the link between animal abuse and interpersonal violence, often documenting laws and different trends. Next slide. Another resource is this handbook, which is from the National Council of Juvenile Family Court Judges. You don't need to be a judge to have access to their information. This other book is Creating Safer Communities for Older Adults and Companion Animals, put together by the Humane Society and the government. Next slide. And that is it. I think I'm a little bit out of time. I don't know if there's any questions. But thank you all very much. I hope it was of use. If you all ever want to contact me, that's my contact information.
And aren't those your animals, Judge?
Yes, they are. They're all rescues. These are siblings that I got them. I was hanging out at a pet store and they were gonna turn these cats in. They're 3 brothers. And the other one followed me home, and the black girl, I got her at the shelter about 3 years ago. She's a doll.
Well, thank you so much for all of the information that you shared with us today. We're going to save the questions to the end so we make sure we have time for the next speaker if you're able to stay. And if not, we'll get questions and send them to you and get answers. But thank you again.
Thank you.
All right, Besa, we're going to go back to you and let you reset our nervous system after all of that information we just heard. So thank you.
Those were very painful experiences we heard about. Power abuse, of domestic violence, and it hurts to hear about them. And it hurts to know that this is ongoing. Let us take a moment to connect to our breath, to connect with our bodies in this space and time. As we breathe in, we understand we are here to support change. Thank you so very much, Judge Figueroa, and all the speakers and enable partners for your advocacy, activism, and support of vulnerable communities, and bringing awareness to the current conditions we're suffering and systemic abuse is being allowed to happen. And we are here together in community to see how we can affect change through bringing awareness and education. As you continue breathing, I want you to listen to these words carefully. Compassion is not a feeling. It is an adaptive process in relation to our lived experience in the moment. So let us now engage in resetting our nervous system. Let us take 3 cleansing breaths, inhaling through the nose and exhaling completely through the mouth. Let this next breath dropping into your body and then making an intention to notice where you feel tension in your body. Localizing where you feel this tension in your body and release it. What are you feeling? What thoughts are arising? Now, I want you to close your eyes and actively listen. And if it feels comfortable for you to either put your hands over your heart or connect to the feeling, to the area of your chest and your heart. And I want you to take in these words as I repeat them and just focus on your breath and taking in these words. May I be well, loving, and peaceful. May all beings be well, loving, and peaceful. May I be at ease in my body, feeling the ground beneath my seat and feet, enjoying my breath as it rises and falls and rises. May I know and be intimate with body, mind, whatever its feeling or mood, whether calm or agitated, whether tired or energetic, whether irritated or friendly. Breathing in and breathing out, breathing in and out, aware moment by moment of the risings and passings of my breath. May I be attentive and gentle towards my own discomfort and suffering. May I be attentive and grateful for my own joy and well-being. May I move towards others freely and with openness. May I receive others with sympathy and understanding. May I move toward the suffering of others with peaceful and attentive confidence. May I continually cultivate the ground of peace for myself and others, and persist mindful and dedicated to this work, independent of results. May I know that my peace and the world's peace are not separate, that our peace in the world is a result of our work for justice. May all beings be well, happy, and peaceful. Reflect for 1 minute and putting your hands back on your lap or wherever they need to go. And observe what has come up for you. It could be a physical sensation, a memory, an emotion, a thought. Using no judgment, just notice what came up, listening to our presentations. and let your breath wash away those experiences. Now take a breath and feel yourself sitting in your chair and back in the room together. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now we're ready for our next speaker, Nilo Cuervo from the Miami-Dade County State Attorney's Office. Nilo, I'm gonna let you continue. Please turn on your camera so the language interpreters can hear you and see your face. And just tell me next when you're ready to switch sides and you're set to go. Thank you.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, thank you, Deborah. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nilo Cuervo, and I'm an assistant state attorney at the State Attorney's Office for Miami-Dade County. My current role is twofold. I am the division chief of the gun violence unit, and I am also the director of our community outreach division. So it's my job, number one, to prosecute violent crimes that occur in our county. Sometimes that includes domestic crimes. And as the director of community outreach, it is also one of my duties to speak to certain organizations such as this one and let you all know what we do at the State Attorney's Office, what our mission is, and how we are doing our best to prosecute crimes in our county. So I want to talk a little bit about just number one, the number of homicides that occur every year that are domestic related. And here you have a chart that goes from 1999 to 2020. And essentially there you're seeing the total number of homicides in Miami-Dade County in the left column. Then in the middle column, in the middle column is the number of homicides every year that are domestic related. And finally, in the third column, what you'll see is the percentage of domestic violence homicides as a part of the whole. And from what you see there every year from 1999, we've had anywhere from 22, 23 to about 41 domestic violence homicides in Miami-Dade County. And as a percentage, as you can see there, it's typically anywhere from 12 to about 19%. So those are, the raw numbers in terms of the number of domestic violence homicides every year. Next slide, please. There's a couple of things that I want to discuss as we talk about domestic homicide facts. Number one is, the homicide itself. But number two, there's always this underlying issue of abuse that comes up in a lot of these cases. But just a couple of quick stats before that. Number one, more than twice as many women are killed by their husbands or boyfriends than are murdered by strangers. And then finally, firearms are frequent weapons. They are the most single common weapon used in a domestic violence homicide is a firearm. Sometimes knives are used, but the one you see the most often are firearms. Next slide, please. But one of the things that I really want to talk about is the effect that it has on children. One of the things that we know both through the science and both through my number of interactions with victims of violent crimes is that a lot of times children are involved. And so let's talk about what happens with that. A lot of times you'll see that those who perpetrate domestic violence, meaning those who are guilty of committing domestic violence, a lot of times they themselves were abused as children or witness abuse as a child. A lot of the victims of domestic violence, unfortunately, have also witnessed domestic violence as a child or were victims themselves as a child of domestic violence. What does this mean? Well, it means that unfortunately, children who are witnesses to domestic violence, number one, have a higher tendency of themselves becoming involved in domestic crimes when they are older. Number two, they have a higher tendency of becoming a victim of domestic crimes when they are older. Next slide, please. And this kind of puts it into perspective. Every year, about 3 million children are exposed to violence by family members. 3.3 million children. That's every single year. In homes where partner abuse occurs, children are statistically 1,500 times more likely to be abused. So what is that to say? Is where there is an abusive parent in any relationship, that parent is, statistically speaking, if they abuse the spouse, they typically also abuse the child if there is one in the home. And finally, 40 to 60% of men who abuse women also abuse children. So statistically, this is hurting children a lot. Next slide, please. So when children are in fact victims, 90% of them are under age 10 and 56% of them are under age 2. So we are talking about infants. Unfortunately, one of the things that one of my roles here at the state attorney's office, before I became the chief of the gun violence unit, is that I was assigned to our domestic crimes unit. So for many years, I was a domestic crimes prosecutor. So I would see a lot of these cases. And unfortunately, one of the things that I saw a lot of is cases where a spouse was violent against the spouse, but in doing so also became violent against the children in the home. Sometimes that violence leads to homicides. So unfortunately, I have prosecuted a number of cases and investigated a number of cases where the abuse was geared not only towards the spouse or the partner, but also towards the children. So those are some of the facts behind domestic violence. And I know the judge previously had spoken a little bit about this as well. So this is the state attorney's vision, because one of the things we gotta do as the state attorney's office is we gotta say to ourselves, okay, how do we combat this issue, right? How do we combat this issue? Because the thing with domestic violence, as has been spoken about previously, is that domestic violence a lot of times is a combination of a lot of issues: mental health issues, drug abuse issues, things of that nature. So we got to think about, all right, how do we combat this? So one of the things that the state attorney's office has done through the years is say, well, let's look at the stats and let's use smart justice. And here's our vision. And some of it is, quite obvious. Public safety is most important, right? And we also want to try to deter crime. We want to work with cases and treat all the individuals in the case, including the defendant, as individuals, meaning what can we do in this individual case to best ensure that the behavior will not happen again, right? And so we also have to maximize, all of our resources. And so this is the plan, right? Next slide. One of our initial plans is what we call smart justice. And let me talk a little bit about what this means, because we have a number of programs within our smart justice portfolio. Next slide. Sometimes, right, not every instance of domestic violence necessitates sending the perpetrator to prison, right? So what we've done, right, throughout the years with the help of the court system is to create a number of courts that are specifically designed to deter future conduct. What do we mean? So we have here in Miami-Dade County what we call drug court. That is exactly that. Sometimes people are charged with certain offenses, right? And again, these are for folks who have been arrested for the first time, who have no serious prior criminal history, but they have been identified as somebody having a drug problem. So through the drug court court, what we do is folks who go to drug court have the opportunity to, number one, get treatment. And number two, if they do the treatment, they complete the treatment, their case gets no pros, meaning the case gets dismissed. That's just, our community is better for it. Why? Because now we have somebody who was a drug user or a drug abuser who is no longer using drugs. That is good for that person. That is good for the community. And that is good for that person's relationship with others. We also have mental health court. Again, similar to drug court, sometimes folks are arrested. Again, these are folks with no previous criminal convictions, and they're identified as somebody as having a mental health issue of some sort, right? And so what we do in those situations is that those defendants are evaluated, and then they go to mental health court where, again, they get treatment, right? They get treatment. Make sure that we are really battling whatever mental health issues are afflicting that person. If they complete the program, excuse me, again, that case is dismissed, right? So again, we've helped out somebody by making sure they get the treatment that they need and that they're better for it. Our most recent problem-solving court has been Veterans Court, and the name says it all. Sometimes we get veterans, right, who come back home from serving overseas, right? And they come with their own mental health issues, substance abuse issues, and sometimes they come into trouble with the law. So Veterans Court is designed to specifically help these folks, right? It's help these folks assimilate back to civilian life and look into whether it be their drug issues or their mental health issues. And if they complete the program, again, their case becomes dismissed. And then finally, the last thing we have is diversion. And again, diversion comes in many ways, but again, it's for folks who have no prior criminal conviction, right? But they come to the court having been arrested. And instead of saying, listen, we're gonna convict this person, make them an adjudicated felon, sometimes they just need diversion. And diversion can come in the form of drug court, mental health court, veterans court, but diversion can also come through other forms, meaning having them do community service, right? Having them pay restitution to the victim of the crime, having them stay crime-free for a certain amount of time. And if they do all those things, again, their case could get dismissed. And the point of this, ladies and gentlemen, is to assure that sometimes people come into the criminal justice system not necessarily because they have an intent to commit crime or they're a nuisance to society. Sometimes people are just dealing with a lot of issues, drugs, mental health issues. So these are problem-solving courts. Next slide, please. Unfortunately, sometimes we have more violent crimes, homicides, attempted murders, those types of crimes where diversion court is just not appropriate. And so either this is a more violent crime or the person who committed the crime has previous convictions or previous arrests. Now we got to deal with them in a more punitive fashion. And what the state attorney's office has done, the state attorney has created a number of units that are specifically designed to battle gun violence, right? And violent crimes. Here at the state attorney's office, we have a domestic crimes unit. So a lot of the cases involving domestic crimes, specifically homicides and attempted homicides, they go directly to our domestic crimes unit. Why do we have a domestic crimes unit? Well, number one, we have ASAs, meaning prosecutors who are specifically trained on how to investigate and litigate these types of cases. But we also have domestic crimes unit because we also have victim specialists who help and assist the victims of these crimes getting through the court process, right? So we have victim specialists that specifically reach out to the victims, making sure they're okay, making sure if they need services, that we partner them with agencies throughout the county to make sure that they get the help that they need. We also have the Gun Violence Reduction Initiative, which is the unit that I am chief of. That is a unit where we are specifically seeking violent felony offenders who are using guns to commit crimes, right? And so that is looking for the worst of the worst. We are looking for offenders who have criminal histories who are committing gun violence. And the point is to get those dangerous folks off the streets. We also have a gangs unit. Again, those are a unit that's specifically designed to look for gangs, right? Or group motivated violence, right? And to make sure that not just the one offender who pulls the trigger is brought to justice, but the entire group, gang, or affiliation that helped him commit that crime. And we also have a career criminal unit. The career criminal unit is designed for exactly that. It's for folks who now have extensive criminal histories and need the consequences of those crimes are higher, either because they're habitual offenders, meaning they have multiple convictions to their records. Next slide, please. Now, we talked about, well, sometimes you have somebody who's new to the criminal justice system, and that person doesn't need to become an adjudicated felon, right? Sometimes we got to help folks, right? Then we talked about, well, sometimes it's beyond that. So now gun violence unit needs to get involved, or the domestic crimes unit. But another service that as the state attorney's office we offer are services to those folks who have already been convicted of a crime or been arrested of a crime, but in a way have turned their life around. So what we've done is started serving those folks as well. Next slide, and I'll tell you how that works. The state attorney here in Dade County some years ago started what she calls the Second Chance Program. So what is the Second Chance Program? Well, the law allows that for somebody who's been arrested for certain crimes, but was never convicted, the law allows for that record to be either sealed or expunged. The process can be a little technical, can be a little tedious, and can be a little lengthy. So one of the things that the state attorney has done is created an in-house program where we go to the community. The state attorney's office goes into the community. We'll go to local organizations, local parks, right? And we will help folks seal and or expunge their records. Why do we do this? Because sometimes folks who have criminal arrests on their record, even though they were never convicted, makes it very difficult for those folks to get a job, to apply for housing, to apply for a mortgage or a loan, to get into the military, or to get into an educational program such as college or nursing school, right? And so we try to take away that hurdle. We try to take away that hurdle and help them move forward with their lives, because that arrest, even though it's not a conviction, can make one's life very difficult. So let me give you just a couple of examples. We had a seal and expungement event just last month. And one of the young men that we helped is a young man who was about 22, 23 years old. He came with his dad and he wanted to get into the military. He had been trying to get into the military, wanted to serve his country as his dad did, but he couldn't get in because of this record. Otherwise, the military had told him, listen, you're a great candidate. We want you in, but this arrest makes it very difficult. So we were able to seal and/or expunge his arrest that happened years ago, and now he can enter into the military. We also had this last time around an older gentleman who himself has served in the Vietnam War. But back many decades ago, he had an arrest that never led to a conviction. And all these years, he's had that arrest in his record. And so he came to our event and he wanted finally to seal it. And so we were able to help out that person as well. So again, these are second chance programs, right? That gentleman has served his country, has never been arrested since he was 18 or 19 years old. And so we helped him out. Next slide, please. So in 2019, now remember, we don't have a lot of stats for 2020 and 2021, unfortunately, because of the COVID epidemic. But in 2019 alone, we helped 1,200 applicants seal and/or expunge their records. 1,200, and that was in 2019 alone. As of 2 months ago, we started going back out to the community and re-engaging in these seal and expungement events. So we're doing them again, and we do them every month. And what we do, we pick a different part of the county every month and bring our services. Next slide, please. So bringing it all together. So it's essentially a 3-step vision, right? Number one, those who first come in to the criminal justice system, right? Whether it be for crimes of domestic violence, right, or other crimes, if they have no prior convictions and no prior arrests, they are sometimes eligible for those problem-solving courts and/or diversion, meaning the state attorney's office and the courts tell these defendants, hey, if you complete your mental health treatment, or if you complete drug treatment, or if you complete these other things that are asked of you, right, your case will be dismissed. So you will not become an adjudicated felon, right? So we have those, that's step one. Step two is, well, sometimes people commit crimes that, quite frankly, diversion is just not an appropriate punishment or remedy. For those crimes, we have specialized units to investigate and prosecute those crimes. Our domestic crimes unit, our gun violence unit, our gangs unit, our career criminal unit. These are folks who have now committed grave offenses, homicide, attempted homicide, right? Violent batteries or assaults, right? And so they are dealt with those units. And then finally, our second chance programs, right? And those are for folks, like we said, have been arrested at some point previously, but other than that, they've never been arrested again and have never been convicted of a crime, but their record shows an arrest. So the state attorney's office is here to say, we will help you seal and expunge that arrest, right? So we can help that participant get a job, get housing, secure a loan, get into an educational program, or even get into the military. Or for some, they just don't want to see that in their record, right? It means, it's cleansing, right? They don't want to see that, right? That's something that happened a long time ago. It was an isolated incident that never led to a conviction. And so they deserve to have that wiped off of their record. I have nothing further. I'm happy to take any questions, but I thank you for your time, and it was a pleasure.
Thank you so much. We have about 10 minutes for questions, and I know that Sharon already has one question in the chat. So Sharon, do you want to read the first question, and then we can have our two speakers answer the questions for about 10 minutes?
Yes, so Mark McGuire said, wonderful presentation. I've learned a lot. Thank you. He said, thank you, Judge Figueroa. He says, I do have a question if someone can voice it for me, which I'm doing. What are we doing to spread awareness within Miami-Dade County about, sorry, jumped. Excuse me, 1 second. I apologize. What are we doing to spread awareness within Miami-Dade County about recognizing the links or signs of abuse using pets as a clue or an indicator of abuse?
That's to me.
Yes, Judge.
Mark, that's an excellent question. I will tell you that before I retired, and unfortunately, this was before the abuse started, we started a roundtable discussions, just getting people that were interested together to see how we could address these issues. I think we're just gearing up on that just now. Obviously, this is a spectacular forum to bring awareness of this. If you provide me your information, so my answer, the short answer is nothing yet. What I am hoping is that with people at the animal, at the shelter, the county shelter, and other people like Diggs and other people that may be interested, that we do start undergoing projects to bring more awareness of the link between the two.
Thank you, Judge.
I'm sorry, guys. Just one more little point I want to make. If you want more information on that, there is that national association, the coalition, gets the link, and that provides like specific things that other communities have done that I'm hoping we'll be able to initiate here. Thank you, ladies.
And Debbie, that's all the questions in the chat, but a lot of people are saying, thank you. We learned a lot. And they appreciated the presentations.
Absolutely. Mark, also to add to the judge's answer, I think that our new domestic violence shelter that actually built a place for animals to stay within the shelter so people don't have to make that choice of stay in an abusive relationship or lose their animal, I think is going to go a long way in helping, and hopefully the county will bring some awareness and let people know that that is an option for them and that they don't have to stay or make that choice. And since it's just new and is just opening now, I think that information will start to come out as we continue moving forward and our community starts reopening after COVID. We do have about 5 more minutes for questions. So if someone else would like to ask a question, if you raise your hand, Sharon can see it and let us. All right, Fred, you want to ask a quick question?
Yes, please. I'd like to ask the state attorney, is there a special unit prosecuting victims of child gun violence? Because I advocate for that. And with a few friends of mine on the Alana Washington case, I know you guys are taking care of that, like with the Chastity Saunders case, the Jada Page case, to name a few. Is there any more penalties? Are you guys going to have a special unit just to go after the people that are murdering our children on the streets and harming them? And our disabled persons too, because we recently, about 2 months ago, had a person in Miami Gardens that was autistic, murdered and shot on a playground dead.
Thank you, Fred.
Thank you, Mr. Christian, for your question. I don't want to get too much into the weeds of Alana Washington's case. What I can tell you is that I am the ASA who was at that scene and who is currently prosecuting that case.
Thank you.
Oh, no, you're welcome. It's my duty and my pleasure. I am also the ASA on the Chastity Saunders case, as well as the Elijah LaFrance case. These are these are cases of gun violence, which is why they fall under my gun violence unit. And so we don't have a specific unit for crimes where the victim is a victim of gun, where there's a child victim of gun violence, they should fall under gun violence generally. But in cases like those, they fall under my unit because we are a specialized unit dealing with gun violence. So that's why those 3 cases are in this unit. So to answer your question, yes, we have a specifically designed unit for gun violence.
Okay.
What was
Thank
the
you.
second part of your question, Mr. Christian? I think you had a 2-part.
Yes, it was for persons with disabilities, such as the person in my city of Miami Gardens that was shot 2 months ago. He was autistic. He was shot on the playground. I forgot which playground it was, in a park, public park in Miami Gardens about 2 months ago. I'm not sure if that's still an active investigation or not, or if it's been handled over to you, but I work with a lot of good organizations. Survivors Affected by Violence with Mrs. Bush. I work with Bullets for Life. I work with a lot of them as an assistant and help advocate. So, you know, I hear this stuff a lot. So I'm just telling you,
Okay. So thank you for the question. So I'm not familiar with that case specifically. What I can tell you is it's a 2-part question. Number one, we have specialized units depending on what kind of crime it is. Like I said, the gun violence crime. However, if there is, and again, I don't know anything about that specific case, so I don't want to presume to know. But if
Right.
there's ever evidence that a crime was committed against somebody because they are a member of a protected class, we do have a hate crimes unit here at
Okay.
the state attorney's office. So if the evidence shows that somebody committed a crime against somebody else because of their race, gender, religion, or disability, we have a specific unit designed for exactly those types of crimes. It's called the hate crimes unit. And we
So in
have,
other words, any gun violence against a person with disabilities would be covered under that.
it depends. It
Or
be
domestic
covered
violence.
under gun violence, or if there's evidence to suggest that the crime was perpetrated specifically because the victim is disabled, or because of their race, or their sexual orientation, then it may
Right.
go to our hate crimes unit.
We don't know yet from what I've heard, but basically I did hear that the person at ASD, which is autism spectrum disorder, and he had no idea. We don't know who was shooting at him, but basically I'll just tell you this. We had no idea who was shooting at him, and he basically had no idea to protect himself from the gunfire. He was a sitting duck because of his disorder.
Okay. What I can do, Mr. Christian, I'll look into that case and make sure that
Thank
there's
you.
somebody assigned to that investigation. Obviously, we
Thank
can't
you.
talk about open investigations, but what I
Right,
can
I
tell
know.
you is I will certainly look into it and make
Thank
sure
you.
that somebody's one of our ASAs is working with the police department to investigate that case.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Attorney General. I do appreciate it as a disabled advocate. I appreciate it. Susan appreciates it. We all do. Thank you.
No, thank you for your question. Thank you.
Debbie,
Thank
there
you
are no
so-
hands up. Any other hands up?
Excellent, thank you. If you have another question, please put it in the chat and we will get an answer for you. So we've heard a lot of great information today from both of our speakers and our MIA liaisons, and what the judge was talking about, this link or bond between animals and humans, it's very strong. And as she told you, it's going to influence a person's emotional, psychological, and physical interactions with the people, the animals, and their environment as a whole. And that's why we wanted to bring it to your attention today and let you see this link, because it's new. It's not new that it's happening, but it's new that we're talking about it, and it's new that we're bringing it in to this work. And that's why we wanted to share it with you today. And also because it's something that our organization DIG takes very seriously and has worked with the judge in the past on bringing awareness to these issues. And the judge was part of a project that we worked on where we're looking at how do you get facility dogs into the areas where victims and survivors are. And we actually did a pilot project where we put a facility dog in Christie House, which is our child advocacy center for children that suffer sexual abuse. And the dog, Pedro's his name, he goes to work every day and he's there for the children, whether it's when they tell their story, when they're getting therapy, if they have to go to court. And our plan, our goal is that ultimately they'll be in the state attorney's office. They might be in the public defender's office. They'll be in the places where survivors, victims, children's are, because we know how important that connection with animals are and the power it gives people to be able to talk about what's going on. And then when we heard from our Nilo talking about what's being done to make sure that there's systems in place, not only to make sure that people get treated the way they need to be treated, but also that there's resources for people too. And you have these alternative options, and you have these diversion programs, and you have all of the things that Nilo talked about, so that we're holistically looking at what's going on in our community and looking at multiple ways to stop the violence, and especially the gun violence. Now, for our last part of our presentation, because I can continue to talk about this for hours, as I'm sure other speakers can, I want to circle back, as I started, to our Enable project partners, because it's not just DIG, it's Catalyst Miami. They are the ones that are in charge of this project. There's the Center for Independent Living of South Florida, who got us our captioner today, and our American Sign Language interpreters, my organization, Disability Independence Group, Advocacy Network on Disabilities, who has counselors available if we have problems or need someone to talk to, our Enable project advisors, which include Mark, who asked a question today, Fred, who asked a question today, and Besa, who brought us the mindfulness throughout the presentation. So we're a group that's growing, and what is the Enable project partners. I always like to show you a calendar of events. If you remember from our first training, we talked about the Tenant Bill of Rights, and there's a public hearing happening on April 14th, which is later on this week. If you want to go and can go and show support, if you reach out to us, we can get you more information on that. Also, May 1st through 10th is the 10 Days of Connection that is done in conjunction with Radical Partners and many organizations throughout the community. And as part of that, the Enable Project is having an event called Lean on Me, an inclusive musical experience. This is happening on May 5th. The event's going to start at 1 p.m. And if you follow us on social media or follow the Center for Independent Living in South Florida, you can register for this event. It's Mind and Melody in partnership with the Enable Project. And then our next training will be on May 23rd. And I already told you we're going to talk about technology and accessible communication. And as I told you, these are the links to find our resources. All of the slides for each training are here in an accessible format, and our YouTube channel with the Enable Project playlist of previous trainings and the trainings for this series will be on there. And then lastly, I would like to tell you thank you. And we so appreciate everyone being here today. And if you use your phone or your iPad and look at the QR code, it will allow you to fill out an evaluation of our training today. Or I had it in the link earlier I put the link in the chat earlier, but you probably have to scroll towards the top to find it unless somebody can re-put it in the chat. But thank you so much. And I so enjoyed spending the afternoon with you today.